Another area the real area that you train on early in your career is referrals, right? As a financial professional, say, hey, get as many referrals as you can. And I've seen all sorts of versions of this. I remember one training class I went to recommended, and we tried this once. One of my younger advisors tried it, that you go on LinkedIn, you find the individual you're going to meet with on LinkedIn, you find 6 contacts that you might have some relationship with, and you walk in, you do the meeting, you hope to sign up as a client, you take out your 5 names and say, which of these 5 people can I introduce you to?
Life Matters, a Penn Mutual podcast for financial professionals, bringing you life insurance insights from advanced sales experts and life insurance specialists. Grow a stronger practice today.
Welcome to another episode of Life Matters, a Penn Mutual podcast. I'm your host, Bill Bell, Vice President of Advanced Sales with Penn Mutual, and I am so pleased that you chose to join us here today. Now, we went a little different for this episode. We invited on Ruvin Levavi, who is the founder of Power Forward Financial in New York City. But Ruvin's an attorney, much like myself, and he's got kind of a specialized practice where he does a lot of work with young attorneys and so forth to help with their financial planning. So we wanted to hear kind of what he does, how he markets himself, how his group stands apart. It's a really interesting conversation. I got a lot out of it. Ruvin is somebody that I haven't known for a long time. I've only known him for about a year and a half, but just a wealth of information. I always love hearing from reformed attorneys that are now in financial services. So I think you'll really enjoy the interview. We're going to get to that just a second here. But first, I have an announcement. I want to take a moment to share a quick tip for everybody tuning in here today. Did you know that your clients can sign up for paperless delivery of Penn Mutual documents? That's right, paperless delivery of Penn Mutual documents. They'll receive instant notification via email when their documents are ready to view. It's quick, it's easy, and it's secure to go green. In fact, I did this with my Penn Mutual policy. It only took a few seconds. I mean, literally, I logged onto the website, I clicked a couple of buttons, and then all of a sudden I was paperless. I'm really concerned about my mailman delivering my mail every single day, how much weight he's carrying on a day-to-day basis just in regards to the catalogs that my wife is getting. Just one less letter every month or every quarter, it's going to make all the difference for him. So I was able to do it. Again, it's really easy to do. It only took a few seconds. So have your clients head over to myaccount.pennmutual.com. That's myaccount.pennmutual.com to get started and enroll today. Again, it just only takes a minute. Make sure they look for the delivery preferences link in their account portal. So with that, why don't we get to the interview that I did with Ruvin, and I'll be back on to wrap up the show after that's over. Ruvin, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Life Matters, a Penn Mutual podcast. It's a true honor to have you here today.
Thank you for having me, Bill. I'm excited to be here. The only time we really ever see each other in person is when we're at fun places outside of work or work-related, but conference-related. So it's nice to see you on a Zoom version.
That is true, although I did stand in that very room that you were in a few months back when I was in New York. So that was exciting to see. I could see the Oculus over your shoulder there. Amazing view from the 1847 financial office there in downtown Manhattan. So before we get into kind of the nitty gritty, let's first find out who you are for our audience. So tell everybody who you are, what you do, where you are, and maybe a little bit of your background.
For sure. So Ruvin Levavi, I run a team called Power Forward Group. We're out of our offices in New York, but we're virtual probably for 90% of the time with our clients. We love being in the office as a team and being together and collaborating together. So we try to be in 2-3 days a week, but we spend a lot of our time really spent living inside the world of the internet, flying from state to state in the matter of nanoseconds as we meet clients across the country. The fun, really kind of my journey and my background really was a walk in life that took me in a complete circle. I grew up with a dad who spent 30 years at New York Life as a life insurance, I'll call him a life insurance guy. He ran a little bit of a holistic practice, but it was really focused on life insurance. He was securities licensed, but he was very, very much focused on the life insurance and protection side of things. And we had a great upbringing. My mother was a business owner of her own right. And my dad was in New York Life for 30 years and loved the company. I was the oldest, and I grew up enjoying all the trips we got taken to, all the conferences. In my mind, I was going to pave my own path. I wasn't going to be a New York Life guy. I was going to be an insurance guy. And we came full circle. So it's interesting the way walks of life work. Think about it with my own kids also. Just you try to instill certain values, and it's interesting where they'll end up.
So I mentioned earlier 1847 Financial. Not all of our listeners, watchers on YouTube, wherever somebody is ingesting this podcast, knows what that is. So just kind of briefly, can you explain what 1847 Financial is and how you're part of that?
The way we think about 1847 and the way we think about our relationship, almost really what brought me here and what created the alliance and the goal alignment that we have together is when I started Power Forward Group, I looked at it almost like a startup company. And 1847 at the time, it's morphed a little bit and it's changed, but I think the values are really the same. Treated their advisors and their financial professionals as businesses that they weren't going to invest in. That was what I was looking for. I made a real career change and then a little bit of a move. And I said, hey, I want to start our own firm for a specific niche of clientels, and we wanted to do it in a way that we envisioned here at Power Forward Group. And when we met with 1847 at the time, it was really just Penn and HDK. And I spoke to Michael Kane and explained to him some of what we were looking to do and create from a business perspective. It became apparent right away. It wasn't about what 1847 wanted. It was about what we wanted and how they were going to meet us there. So I know that doesn't really technically answer your question. I can hit more of the technical side, but that was the format that I was looking for as a financial professional. And it really didn't exist in the marketplace. It was not something that existed. And I don't know if it exists. I don't know if other insurance carriers are doing what Penn is doing with 1847.
The way that I tell people what it is it's part of the Penn Mutual family, but still very fiercely independent. So yeah, you could choose who to place your business with whatever carrier best meets your client's needs, but you're still part of the Penn Mutual family. So I think that just from a 10,000 foot overview perspective, it's a good way of kind of thinking about it. But Power Forward Group and your affiliation with 1847 is still an independent financial professional organization. And so I think that that's so important for people to understand.
The term of art that was used originally, what really drew us here. Well, first, what drew me here was I was using a ton of Penn products. It was first in class. And we have a clientele that's discerning. And as financial professionals and advisors, I think our role is to bring what's best in class to our clients. And it just happened to be then and now, especially in the fixed product side of things, Penn's products were at the top of the list. So we were doing the business anyways. And as we discussed with HDK at the time, they called it channel fluidity. And it's morphed really into the open architecture independent model that we have now at 1847. But the concept was you create your business. We have a platform that can support your business wherever you're bringing your investment business, wherever you're bringing your fixed income business, wherever you're bringing your risk management business. We're good with it, but we'll give you the tech stack, we'll give you the compliance support, and we'll give you, frankly, the investment and the training to build out what you want to build. And I think 1847 is the penultimate version of it. So it's been great, and it continues to be great.
I want to circle back to something that you talked about earlier, and that's your career change. So we met for the first time in person probably about a year and a half ago. I was doing a meeting in New York City. You were there. And afterwards, I was talking to somebody saying, hey, who's that guy over there who's really sharp? He really seemed to know his stuff. And it's like, oh, that's Ruvin. He's a former attorney. And I'm like, oh, I love talking to former attorneys. When did you know that you didn't want to be an attorney? You look at your LinkedIn page, it says you spent about 2 years as a trust and estates attorney. When did you know that wasn't for you? Because obviously I'm an attorney myself. I've never spent a day as an actual attorney. I've always worked in kind of advanced sales for insurance companies. When did you decide that wasn't the path that you wanted to go down, and why did you make the change?
Well, the world changed around me, but I really never really, the least sharp thing I did was thinking about why I wanted to be an attorney. And really, the only reason I went to law school and the only reason I thought about it is I was lucky enough to be a good test taker. I was really good at standardized tests, and law is pretty formulaic in terms of the academic system. And I was dating a girl who's now my wife, who had my in-laws who were, at the time, just my girlfriend's parents were very traditional people. And they had expectations. How are you going to take care of our daughter? And I was young. I had no idea. And I said, wait, I got to buy time and I got to give them an answer that'll suffice. Otherwise, I'm going to have some relationship problems. And I said, I'll go to law school. That was really it. That was the reason I went to law school. I loved undergrad. I loved college. I love learning. I love reading. And I figured law school would be great. It was okay. It was fine. What I did find that I loved in the practice of law is I loved being in the courtroom. I loved thinking on my feet. It got the adrenaline rolling. It made me think about, strategy as it was coming at you, which really pretended to go really well with the business we're in today, really thinking on your feet and getting in front of people. Out of law school in 2008, 2009, the easiest way to be in the courtroom and the most direct path is to work for the government. So I worked for the New York Attorney General's office coming out of law school. And in 2009, something interesting happened. You remember what happened, Bill? This area
Uh,
behind me was not happy. Wall Street was
no,
not happy.
no.
I don't even know the terms anymore. We call it economic crash, economic depression, but the market fell apart around us. And the law firms, all these corporate law firms, had this great idea. They didn't want to lose their attorneys, they didn't want them to leave, but they had no work for them. So they decided that they wanted to get their best attorneys more courtroom experience. And you can work for a corporate law firm for 10, 15 years and sometimes never make it into the courtroom. So they had this idea, we'll send our attorneys to work for the government pro bono. We'll continue to pay them. And when we have work for them, we'll bring them back to the law firm. It worked out really well for them. The problem was if you were a new government attorney, the government didn't need you anymore. So they told us we had a job, but they weren't paying us. That wasn't a job. Death and taxes is always a thing, as we know in our business. Trust and estates was hiring. I had a young family. I had to do something. So I fell in with a boutique trust and estates firm, which was the exact opposite of being in the courtroom. I went from thinking on my feet to drafting documents all day. First, it was interesting. The philosophy of a lot of the estate planning side was interesting. But what really made me nuts was my relationship with my clients was very transactional, right? From an estate planning point of view, done correctly, it's not something your clients are going to do 5, 6 times in their lives. Generally, you do it once, maybe twice. We put a plan in place. We'd spend months putting the documents together. We discuss their goals, objectives, the tax planning, and then you never see your client again. And I knew I was in trouble. That wasn't working out well for me.
I think that's a similar story to a lot of kind of reformed attorneys that wind up in financial services, is that it's just not a good fit. I went to law school because I was a history major in college, and I discovered when I graduated, you could do two things. You can become a teacher or you could go to law school. And I said, law school it is. And then when I got to law school, I figured out I don't really want to be a true attorney. And so I got an MBA at the same time. I really loved business school. I didn't really particularly like law school. And so kind of this role I found myself in, where this kind of an amalgam of marketing and law and so forth was a good fit. But so it's kind of interesting to hear your path, kind of wanting to be in the courtroom, but now being able to think on your feet in a different arena, financial services, planning for your clients and so forth, is, I think, a good fit for you, obviously.
Yeah. So oddly enough, what really happened and what I saw happening while I was working in the legal spaces, a lot of the clients were coming to us by way of the financial advisor. I realized those financial advisors had really strong relationships with their clients that were lasting, many, many years, right? A lot of times when you get to the estate planning phase with your client, you've been working with them for a number of years, and those relationships were super close. And then, of course, like I told you at the beginning of the story, there was my dad, the guy I never wanted to be. And I said, wait, isn't that what that guy's doing? So I wanted to make the shift. I wanted to go into the advisory space. And I said, Dad, what do you think about the risk management side and the estate planning side of insurance? He said, that's what I do. So I walked out of the attorney's office. I walked over to my dad's office on 42nd and Lex in the Gray Bar building. And I signed up for New York Life. And that was the beginning of the shift. What I realized very quickly was I love my dad. He's a massive mentor of mine, but he was already at the back end of his career. He ran what I'd term lovingly as a friends and family practice. It wasn't so much a business. It was really who you knew and the referrals you get from who you knew. And New York Life was very much about selling New York Life. It wasn't about who your end client was. It wasn't about all the planning I had done on the legal side. So it was a good place to stop and get a little bit of the training, but it was really hard to make the shift. And my dad and I eventually looked at each other and I knew I had to move. I had to get out of his office. I had to go somewhere else. And that's when we started to look. And that's when we found really Michael Caine in 1847 and began the journey we're on today.
All right. That's some great background. Let's get into more kind of what you do and how you do it. So first of all, we've already established you're in New York City. There's a few financial professionals in your neighborhood there. In fact, if you opened up that window and dumped your drink out there, you'd probably splash somebody with a financial professional with it. How do you stand out amongst such a crowded field? What do you do to kind of make it so that clients gravitate towards your practice versus some of those others in such a saturated market?
Yeah. So I think that's an excellent question. We think about that all the time. What I wanted to and what we created was a business that stood on its own right. And we had to really say, hey, who are our clients? How are we building that book of business? And how are we supporting that book of business? When I looked across the marketplace, the people I understood best were people that had my background in life, my walk of life, corporate attorneys. And when you think about it from a building a business perspective, to your point, Bill, right? You got Merrill Lynch, you got Morgan Stanley, you got UBS, you got everybody rolling around in your own building. You probably have 5 financial advisors on 5 different floors. So to exist, we wanted to really know our clients and add tremendous value to them. So we said, let's carve out a specific clientele. Let's make sure that we understand their finances better than they understand their finances. Let's make sure we're adding value, and let's make sure we can scale that value to grow our practice and grow our advisory side of things. So that was the first really market that we really delved into. When you think about getting out there and marketing yourself amongst a saturated environment, if you're really particular about who you're working with, you can make sure that you do stand out. So we spent a lot of time thinking about that, thinking about our thought leadership in the marketplace, thinking about where to add value. If you search financial advisor, right? If you go into Google now, AI, I think everything's moving to ChatGPT searches, you're going to get hit with Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, Citibank. But if you're an attorney at one of the law firms we work with thinking about financial advisory, because of all the articles we've written and all the work we've done in the space and the people we work with, we'll pop. We'll pop before a lot of those firms. So we stand out. We're able to stand out. We spent a lot of time really building out a model that stands out to our clients.
Yeah. So actually, that dovetails great into my next question here, because I know you do a lot of work with attorneys and law firms and so forth. Outside of writing articles, how do you approach attorneys? How do you approach firms? Do you do something different with them versus other business owners? And do they have needs that are different than other business owners, like manufacturing firms or whatever it might be? Because I know that law practices are just a different animal when it comes to kind of structure, payouts, and so forth.
I think a lot of it is around the life cycle that they live and lead. It's a very hard, finance is hard to work in, corporate law is hard to work in. It's a service industry, and you're making your money based on billable hours. When you think about your time, right? Time scales, but if all your scalable time is at work so you can pay yourself and pay your family, do you have time for your family? Is question number one. That's the first thing you have to carve out. And then do you have time for your own finances? And that's the first struggle a lot of our clients, specifically in that industry, face. And the way it's built out is almost by design. I'm a little bit of a cynic, but almost by design as a treadmill, right? When I came out of law school, I had a fair amount of student debt. And I think most of our clients have a fair amount of student debt.
I still have some myself.
There we go. So I had a fair amount of student debts, and that's what most of our clients have coming out. So what do? You look for the highest paying job because you want to pay that off as quick as you can. Not necessarily the job you want, but the job that's going to take care of your student debt. And what we love as a practice and an advisory side about the law, but what I think is tough as a client side is there's something called the Cravath scale. Every law firm pays exactly the same grid rate. Year 1, year 2, year 3 out of law school, and you kind of work your way up. You go from being a young associate to maybe a counsel to maybe a partner. So there's career stages. And of course, your salary goes up incrementally. But what do you know about people as their salary goes up? What do?
They spend more money.
Life happens, right? It's a podcast, right? So
That's right.
life happens. And that's what we're doing it for. So expenses go up. You get rid of those student loans, but now you own a home or you're trying to buy a home. You're starting a family. You're hardly keeping up with your growth rate. It's not an accident. I'm convinced that corporate America knows exactly what they're doing. So they keep you there and they keep you on that scale. What's really nice is we're able to try to get ahead of that for a lot of our clients. Because what is everybody looking for? They're looking to hit some sort of financial goal, whether it's financial independence, retirement. But the hardest thing is to zoom out, step back for a minute, and look at how do I get there, right? Because you're thinking about the next thing and the next thing. And you're thinking about your billable hours, right? You got to do an amazing amount of billable hours a year. So we really zoom out and start with that goal for our clients and then really delve into how we can optimize what they're making today to create whatever their life cycle goal is.
And then how do you incorporate life insurance as part of that? Is it personal protection for young attorneys, kind of for family protection? Do you utilize it as part of a kind of a retirement income portfolio? Where does life insurance really come into play when you're working with those types of clients?
So in a couple of different ways, depending on the client, and frankly, it's not for every client. We spend a lot of time on the asset management side as well. Always risk management. Risk management comes first, right? Clients who need to cover risk beyond their policy that they get through work. We're there. We love term insurance. We love to make sure that the risk is covered and we have enough insurance in place for what insurance is really there for. If the worst thing happens, you want to make sure your family's in an okay spot. So that's kind of base level number one. Base level number two for a lot of our clients over time is we utilize insurance as a non-correlated asset, only whole life, overfunded whole life insurance as a non-correlated asset for a lot of their fixed income portfolios. These clients, although they don't always feel it, are some of the highest earners in America. They want to make sure they're maximizing every one of their accounts. So we start with their 401ks, right? Most of them are automatically maxing out their 401ks. How many of them, Bill, do you think about how their 401ks are allocated or what they're invested in?
Probably single digit percentage.
Yeah, I think we're in the 1% to 2% range. We start off by really making sure they're maximizing and utilizing their own benefits and spending a moment of time thinking about their benefit package itself and really how to allocate their 401k. And then we look out towards their goals and we try to figure out what percentage they should be saving for each of their goals and make sure they're allocated effectively towards that. And one of the ways we use life insurance in that space is we try to use that as a non-correlated asset to complement their investment portfolios, which we help manage, as well as their retirement income portfolios. And really the thought process is, as opposed to having to always think about managing the fixed income portion of their portfolio, life insurance for the right client, if we're able to overfund it, get the cost of insurance as far down as we can get it, does a wonderful job being their fixed income allocation to complement the volatility risk that they're going to face in retirement. That's one of the things we think about a lot. And I think a lot of Americans default to something called a target retirement date fund. When you think about what's going on there is as you progress through your careers, you're picking up more and more fixed income, which is structured to lower out that volatility by picking up more in fixed income. But over time, historically, that should be lowering your rate of return. Our goal is really to ensure that we're maximizing each account to its full potential. And that way, sure, volatility and risk don't mean the same thing, right? And I think our industry does an awful job of that, the financial advisory industry. They take terms and they mix and match. And when you think about the legal industry, we're really specific about our terminology. Volatility and risk, two different definitions. Do they intersect? They did intersect. That's when volatility becomes risk. When is that in retirement or when you have a short-term need of money? So we want to solve for that, but we don't want to pre-solve for that 15, 20 years before somebody faces that volatility risk. So we start to think through timelines with our clients and frankly have them think about the way to make that work. So that's one area we're using insurance for in that space. The other is one of the wonderful things about working in the corporate attorney spaces and having the trust and estates background is sometimes we work with the trust and estates departments. They have a lot of family office clients who need more help on the or increased help, I should say, on the advanced planning side of things and the generational wealth side of things. And because of the background we have in that space, we spend a lot of time thinking about how to pass wealth from G1 to G2 and complement the trust and estates departments of the law firm. So that's been a real fun area for me personally, for our firm. It lets me go back to kind of my trust and estates roots and bring that into our practice while we're still working with young clients growing out.
That was something I wanted to ask you about as well is, have you been successful in turning clients that you've worked with that are attorneys into referral sources? Because I know that for a lot of financial professionals, their best cases come from referral sources like CPAs or attorneys. Have you had any success in that? And do you think that you'll continue to see kind of that ball rolling as you work with attorneys, they become referral sources, and now you've kind of built this incredible network of potential referral sources and clients at the same time?
So yes, but I think it's still a work in progress. I think from a centers of influence perspective, I think we see a fair amount of referrals of saying, hey, this family needs this type of help, similar to the generational wealth side we were just discussing. I do think Zoom is a little bit of an impediment there. We love that we have clients across the country, and for a lot of our clients, we only ever meet them on Zoom. But I think really when you want to think about expanding a center of influence, you got to get on a plane. You got to get out there. You got to have lunch. You got to have dinner. You got to expand that relationship. That's part of our business plan going forward, is spend a little bit more time doing that. But that exists really nicely. Another area the real area that you train on early in your career, and I remember from my New York Life days, is referrals, right? As a financial professional, say, hey, get as many referrals as you can. And I've seen all sorts of versions of this. I remember one training class I went to recommended, and we tried this once. One of my younger advisors tried it, that you go on LinkedIn, you find the individual you're going to meet with on LinkedIn, you find 6 contacts that you might have some relationship with, and you walk in, you do the meeting, you hope to sign up as a client, you take out your 5 names and say, which of these 5 people can I introduce you to? And I think there's a place for that early in an advisor's life. And I understand why New York Life and, the Mass Mutuals and Northwesterns of the world think about their sales force and say, hey, let's create as much efficiency as we can off that first meeting you have. But when we think about our clientele, and I think about what we're building at Power Forward Group as a practice, we're thinking about working with our clients for 30, 40 years, especially as we add wealth management into our schematics. So what we try to do part of our scaling is we try to force, I say this tongue in cheek, we try to force our clients to meet with us twice a year, right? Their biggest impediment is time. We try to get them used to this idea that they'll have their annual reviews and a semi-annual review with us. And what we're trying to implement now is on the second annual review. So the second year they've been with us, on the second semi-annual cycle, we'll start to ask, is there anybody you could think of in your network, in your firm, who can benefit from the help we've given you? And I think by doing that, 2 years into a relationship, that client understands the value. They understand how we work as a firm. So they're really able to add their referral source and say, hey, I'm really bringing my colleague something I trust, not something I just purchased transactionally today. That's a big part of our game plan for 2025, 2026.
All right, terrific. Last kind of business related question, and then I got some fun questions for you here.
The business is fun, I promise. That's why I do it. Otherwise, I won't do it.
All right. How about non-business related fun questions? I agree. Business is fun, but I want to talk a little bit about Penn Mutual and what it is that you like about Penn Mutual as a carrier. Obviously, this is Life Matters, a Penn Mutual podcast. So we want to be kind of highlighting some of the things that we do really well. What are some of the things that we do well at Penn Mutual? Why do you like working with the company? What are some of the things that we could be doing better? And maybe just say a few words about the company and your interaction with us.
Well, I love the people, and I'll come back to that in a minute. The people who make up the company. I think that is really important. But my client is my client, right? That's where I sit as a financial advisor, and it's the client's a Power Forward Group. So it's really two things that matter a lot to our clientele. Three. One is that we're offering the best in class product, and Penn has had that, which is amazing. So, Ray, if you're listening, Dave, if you listen, let's keep that up because that does help. It definitely helps, and it's one of the reasons we looked for a new shop. We said, hey, that's the first place we end up was Penn Mutual because they had that first in class product, and then everything followed suit after that. So first in class product. I think at the next level, it really is about the openness they've had with their clients. Penn Mutual's client is the financial professional, and we feel that day in, day out. We feel that from the compliance side of things. We feel that from the planning side of things, Bill, from your department. And we feel that all the way from the leadership side, from Dave O'Malley to Ray Couch to everybody on down to Heather. This idea that we know our clients the best. And if we're asking for something, we're asking for it because we're asking for it on behalf of our clients. And we've had incredible dialogue about where we see our practice going and then hence the industry going. And Penn has done a wonderful job of meeting us there. And I guess that circles to the people. Penn Mutual's going to be a Fortune 500 company soon, knocking on wood. It's a big company where market share is growing. But that ability to have dialogue and talk to you, Bill, talk to Dave, talk to Heather, and have real conversations, not just, your basic corporate plaudits and then move on, has been felt throughout, almost a decade here. See it every day in practice. I just had a conversation with Michael Kane today about something we want to add to our platform. I said, who do I go to? Because you want to make sure you're going to the right person, right? You want to ask, I won't call it favors, but you want to make sure you're reaching up the chain of command correctly. And Michael's response is, I think that wouldn't go directly to Heather on. You're going right to the top. Everything here has been wonderful. I think the corporate culture and the people and the mutuality, we feel it day in, day out.
All right, very good. By the way, that's officially the first time that the word plaudits has been used on Life Matters, a Penn Mutual podcast. So kudos on that one. A few questions to kind of round out the interview here. So you're a New York guy. You're in downtown right now. When people come up to you and say, I don't know how you live in New York, I don't know how you work in New York, what do you say back to them? Because I think it's a tremendous city. I love visiting there. I wouldn't move there because Mrs. Bell is a warm weather type and New York winters would be a little rough for her. But I love it there. What do you say to people in regards to those that like to bash on New York City?
So I have a love-hate relationship with New York, to be honest. I love New York. I'm born and bred. I married a girl from Brooklyn who will never let me leave Brooklyn, and I love her very dearly, so I'm never leaving Brooklyn. But to your point, right? It's ugly behind me today. The weather is challenging sometimes, and it's a big city, and there's not that much space. I have a growing family of 3 kids, and I noticed in the last couple of years that almost every weekend I'm doing something. I'm either going up to the mountains, we do a ton of skiing. When it's really cold out, we'll go to warm weather places. So there are definitely pulls to get me outside New York. However, I am clearly a New Yorker. You can hear it in my voice. You hear it in my accent. I move really quickly. I move really fast. I'm abrasive sometimes in a loving way. And I think it fits in and New York powers me. And that's where it comes from. I love New Yorkers. I think New York is the best city in the world in terms of the people, what makes it up. And it speaks to this country in a lot of ways that I really love, enjoy.
All right. We talked about sports a little bit earlier. I'm wearing a Los Angeles Rams shirt, which you pointed out I'm in the wrong season, but my baseball team's already out of it, and the Lakers have been eliminated from the playoffs. So I got football season to look forward to here. Are you a Giants, Yankees, Rangers, Knicks guy, or are you allowed to kind of mix it up as a New Yorker?
Down the line, straight down the line. You can mix it up, right? You can be a Mets fan, but usually Mets fans somehow end up being Jets fan. I don't know what the psychology is there. Yeah, you got it down the line. I'm a big sports fan, big sports household. Power forward group, the name comes from hockey. I try to play beer league hockey at least twice a week. Everybody thinks it's basketball related. We are building out a little bit of an athlete practice in our firm. We love the concept of the power forward on your team, right? Where the idea it's a complete player. It's a player sometimes isn't going to score 30 points. On the hockey team, it's a player who's not going to have a hat trick all the time, but he's a player who makes sure everything else gets done. And that's really how we think about our firm.
All right, last question for you. You said you're a Brooklyn guy. You married a Brooklyn person. There's a lot of arguments in regards to where the best pizza is in New York City. In your opinion, where would that be? Like if somebody's coming to New York and you say the best pizza in the city is where, what would your answer be?
I would say it's in Brooklyn. We have the Farrah's Pizza, which is a one of one. We have Spumoni's, which is a completely different slice, but it's also one of one. I know you were here to do some Joe's Pizza, which is really close to our office. Joe's is great. I'll put it number 3 behind those two. So we're going to Brooklyn.
We did John's Pizza.
I did John's. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, we did John's. So no slices at John's, but tremendous. And yeah, in fact, for those of you that are listening and haven't checked out the YouTube channel, we will have an episode of Bites, Sites, and Life Insurance Insights featuring Michael Kane, who you've mentioned a couple of times, at John's Pizzeria. That will be out here sometime before the end of 2025. So looking forward to that. There's great pizza in New York. There's great pizza in Chicago, but the New York stuff is special. I don't get over to Brooklyn very frequently, so I'll have to check those places out next time I get a chance.
When you come, Bill, we'll pull you to Brooklyn.
All right. I love that. All right. Well, Ruvin, really appreciate the time. Great insights. Great information for our listeners. Thanks so much for being our guests on this episode of Life Matters, a Penn Mutual podcast. I think the listeners will get a lot out of this interview.
Thank you for having me, Bill, and I always appreciate the support of you, the 1847 Penn Mutual family. It drives us forward, baby.
All right, let's go.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update.